Good morning. It is another episode of Nerds with Badges, and we are on day 15 of my Kickstarter campaign to raise funds for my comic book Dragon Banks. It is quarter after 6 over here in Los Angeles, California, and I just got off of work. I'm about to go home, but I wanted to do a quick video because when I get home, God knows when I'll wake up. And my internet is slow. So I don't know what's going on with my internet. When I got back from my Florida trip, my internet was just really, really wonky. I don't know what the hell's going on. So probably sometime in December, I'm gonna have to like change my internet service provider because yeah, I'm paying like 70, like 60 something dollars, and I have like my internet is just like, maybe it's because I've had it for so long. I've had the same modem for over 10 years now, and it's situated behind a heavy ass shelf that I have in my apartment. And this shelf would literally fall apart if I tried to move it, and I would need another person there to help me. So it's just something I've been putting off for a really long time. But my internet is, it needs a lot to be desired. It's one of the reasons why I haven't tried streaming. You know, I know a lot of people, a lot of content creators on YouTube and other platforms do streaming. And I think I might have tried streaming maybe once or twice, and my internet is really not that good to handle it. It's like if I'm trying to watch, if I'm downloading something, for example, if I'm uploading something or downloading something, and I try to like play like an online game like Vampire the Masquerade, which I play like almost every day on my PlayStation. If I'm playing that, it'll start like doing weird stuff. Like, you know, it'll just start glitching because of it. And I can't even play. Forget about playing Diablo 4. Diablo 4 just is like the worst. I can't. I think that my Xbox has like, for some reason, I don't know. It just takes forever to download, or so I don't know if that's because of the way that it's made. But the PlayStation actually uploads and downloads stuff pretty quickly. But the Xbox, if I'm downloading anything on the Xbox, it will just pretty much kill my bandwidth. Um, Interestingly enough, Netflix and YouTube tend to work pretty well. You know, YouTube, I've started having issues with YouTube. But anyway, enough about my problems, my internet bandwidth. I used to do a lot of like gameplay here at work, actually, on my for Vampire the Masquerade and Mario Kart, but I can't even do that anymore because they started uh, doing something weird with the internet here because of some issues that they had with, you know, with some, they had some issues with some people doing something that kind of caused problems with the internet. So now we're like, we're really limited. So I may have to get a hotspot. Something I've been thinking about. It's not all that expensive to get a hotspot. I may even have one on my phone. You think I'd like be more tech savvy, but I am with certain things. But in other things, I'm just kind of like, So maybe when I get my internet speed up and I learn how to stream, then it will bring more, maybe draw more traffic, because I'm people keep telling me if I stream, then more people will tune in to like gameplay videos and stuff. So I was here last night. I started reading. I started reading one of my comic books the other night that I drew when I was like in high school, and it was really interesting. And then I got this. I started getting some ideas. So it was an interesting story that I wrote about. Let's see, I meant to read it when I came in for this shift, and it didn't happen. I meant to finish reading it, but I've got like 4 issues here for this comic that I did years ago, like 1990. I guess it says 1990. And this particular story deals with Dracula hiring some people to kill this character, Detective Pig, which I made into a comic book cartoon, and I'm doing a comic book updated version. And I started thinking, maybe for my next Detective Pig animated project, maybe I can revisit that story because I think it's interesting. I'll make some changes. I don't think I'll have Dracula trying to ping somebody. Maybe I'll have some other Detective Pigs nemesis or something. But I've always loved the Universal monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein, the werewolf, the mummy. Let's see, Dracula, Frankenstein, werewolf, the mummy, creature from the Black Lagoon, Invisible Man. I don't think I left anybody out. They were trying to revive the Universal MonsterVerse, and the Mummy movie came out. I really liked it. I don't know. It didn't. It tanked at the box office. I don't know why people didn't like it. The Wolfman, I guess it did okay. They didn't like Dracula Untold. Um, so the Invisible Man movie actually did really good. So I know they were doing them. They were trying to do a connected MonsterVerse, and I guess since the movies didn't do that well, particularly the Mummy, it just didn't happen. But I think that there's a lot of stories to be told with those characters. Just you just have to stay in the public domain with your versions. I mean, those characters are all Dracula, Frankenstein, and those characters. They're in public domain as long as you don't like make Frankenstein look like how he looked in the Universal movies, which everybody kind of goes with that, the square head and the bolts. I don't even think Frankenstein looked like that in the books, but that was just Universal's take on it. So that's like their copyright. But if you want to write like stories about Frankenstein or Dracula or the Invisible Man or a Invisible Man, there's ways to get around. And I think there's a lot of good stories that could be they could modernize those. But anyway, I'm getting all off my topic. So anyway, I read those. I was gonna finish reading up those comic books, and I got this in the mail. This came in the mail uh, last night. When I went to check, and I actually got this comic book mixed up with a comic that I read years ago called Top 10, and I got them mixed up because they're very similar in tone. But I had read about this character, the Infidel, and this character who's kind of like the Superman character. I thought this character was really interesting because he was a slave who learned magic, and he's kind of like a Doctor Doom kind of character almost in a lot of ways. He just became so intelligent with magic and alchemy and science and everything. And this guy, he had like his own ideas for how the world should be, and I guess he would time travel and just influence different things throughout time. And this guy would always like thwart his plans because he would basically show up at really bad points in history, like this Titanic is shipping, the Titanic is sinking, and he's like show up there and just be like, if you want to live, come with me. And then he would just take some people, that would go with him while the ship is sinking. So people would basically be in situations where they have no choice but to say, yeah, we should take us out of here. This building is burning or whatever. So he would end up taking those people and making them like his servants, and then or experiment on them and stuff. So that's not really very nice. So these two guys would always fight. They were kind of like they had the Lex Luthor Superman dynamic, eternal conflict with each other. But even though every year they get together and they have dinner and just discuss things going on in the world and in their lives, and this is really interesting. They just basically gave up on fighting each other because they realized they couldn't kill each other. It's just I just thought it was such a good story, and I think the character is really interesting. It's a really interesting character, real cool, black character, and so I don't know, maybe one day they'll bring this character back in a big way and do something cool with him in the Samaritan. 'Cause I think this is a very well written story. So my comic book, um, I have to sit down and do like a Bible because that'll just help me. Because sometimes I feel like I'm doing a lot. I'm doing too much at one time. So I had to sit down and write a list of like some things. I have it here. So it just helps me when I have things that if I have something in front of me, I can look at. It just kind of helps me from getting too out there, or just feeling overwhelmed. So I've got the Dragon Manx comic that I'm working on. My list here. I got the Dragon Mains comic. I'm doing a Satchwatch in the Mythology Sisterhood cartoon. I'm doing a Satchwatch in the Mythology Sisterhood comic. I'm doing the Sons of Legend web series pilot. The script will be formatted before this month is over, and so I was hoping to start filming on that this month, but it looks like it's gonna go into December. Then I got a comic I had done years ago called Gamer Granny, which is about a grandmother who plays video games really well. And then I have a comic called Jabilla that I had done years ago. Probably at least maybe 3 or 4 issues done already, but I just need to get them maybe fine tune it a little bit. The artwork, everything is done for Great Gamer Granny and Jabilla. I've been sitting on these comics, and I think I just been maybe caught up in life, and but it's time for me to do something with them. So I've been working a 9 to 5 jobs for a long time, and I'm just like ready to just go into business for myself. I definitely think there's an audience for my work. I've got a lot of really unique ideas, a lot of out there stuff. I think it's just perfect. Um, I did a. I've always been fascinated with John Henry, the whole story of John Henry. So I actually took that story. If you're not familiar with John Henry was a real big, muscular, uh, black guy, and I guess I don't know if he would. They say, I guess he was superhuman because he had a contest with this machine that they created. It's like the railroad tracks. They drive these pikes or stakes into the ground, like these big ass nails that go down, and they hold, I guess, the tracks together. So there was like a discussion whether a machine could replace men, which were usually doing all of this. So they create this machine, steam powered machine, and there was like a argument over who could do it. Disney did a cartoon, and definitely should check it out if you haven't seen it. But John Henry basically challenged the machine so he could drive the pikes, and I guess even going through rock to finish. And he actually, so there was a race between him and this machine that somebody had invented. John Henry, incredibly, he actually beat the machine. He outraced it, outpaced it. And then, like, he just died, like, right after that, which was, like, really tragic. You get a cool character, cool hero character, and he just, like, dies, but he beat the machine. So I'm doing, like, my own spin on the legend. The Rock wanted to do a movie about John Henry years ago. I don't know what happened. You know, I was like, when I think of John Henry, I mean, when you see John Henry and all the stories, dark skin, I mean, I'm just saying. Now they did do a movie. It was it wasn't really that good. It was called John Henry because Terry Crews lived in the hood and he carried a big ass hammer like John Henry, and I guess he was inspired by the mythology, and he beat up the gangbangers and tried to protect the neighborhood or something. I think that was, I mean, it was just wasn't that good. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased because when I think of John Henry, I just think of some big badass supernatural type character. So I did like my own version, and I did like a 5 or 6 page comic where I completely changed the origin of John Henry. So in my story, which will be published, actually published it on Instagram in its entirety. But in my story, John Henry was like a slave. Um, Him and his best friend were out in the woods one day, and and there was some aliens, and one of the aliens, I guess, got really badly injured by a bear. So John Henry jumps in. John, he was a big guy. He's a big guy, kind of maybe a little slow, but he goes in to help the alien because he's trying to do the right thing, and he gets badly injured. He saves the alien. So the other slaves, him and his friend, he goes back home, and the other slaves, they take him back to the house, and he's basically dying. And I was inspired by. I got some inspiration from Highlander because Highlander had a similar situation where a character was dying, and he like came back to life. So John Henry's like dying, and nobody can really do anything for him. Then like the next morning, he's all healed, and people just kind of freak out on him and everything, and they just kind of like turn against him. But what happened was in the middle of the night, the aliens came and healed him, and they brought him back. So John Henry's basically like has to leave the plantation, and the slave owner is all like, this is my property, you can't leave, and I'm going to kill your family or whatever until and because that's punishment. So John Henry has to come back and save his family. So John Henry has been augmented by the aliens. Not only is he stronger, but he's also smarter. He's more. He's like a super soldier with something extra, and I'll get to that. So John Henry comes back to save his family. He beats up the bad guys, and everything's looking all wonderful. Then John Henry gets shot, and he gets captured, and they're like torturing him, and something triggers the power in him, just like it manifests when they're like torturing him, and he just explodes, literally explodes, kills a bunch of people on the plantation, including all the tormentors. And so John Henry has like some kind of like power that he can do, like a blast, but when it just manifested itself, and he couldn't really control it. So in time, he learns how to control it, and he's immortal. He ends up hanging out with some superheroes, some other superpowered people, and they become like different, early incarnation of my Sons of Legend characters. Because John Henry meets up with some other mythological people, and John Henry has kids, and they have powers too, which will be introduced in my stories. One character who is in the Satchwatchet Mythology Sisterhood project. His name is Hartley. Hartley is the great grandson of John Henry, and he has powers sort of like Luke Cage, only he can jump really high, and he has like force blasts, and he kind of learns how to kind of fly with it. And John Hartley has a romantic connection also, or had a romantic connection with Dragon Manx. I don't know. I feel like Dragon Manx has got a lot of gotten a lot of play, but he had a connection with Dragon Manx. The character of Hartley is dear to me because he represents something, someone who made some mistakes and went to prison, and he's trying to turn his life around. And there's a struggle trying to get work with a criminal record and all that. Those are things that that I think a lot of people can identify with. People will see that. I think that there's some of the best stories come from from things that happen in real life. I mean, some elements of like fantasy and science fiction. I think it makes it all more relatable when you tell stories that it's things that are happening. But they do say reality sometimes is stranger than fiction, right? So anyway, getting back to the John Henry, that's one project, and there's a Detective Pig comic book which is done, and that needs to get published. I'm getting storyboards done. Got to finish the Dragon Manx novel, Paul Bunyan comic, Zorro's descendants, who have like magical swords. Paul Bunyan is another. Paul Bunyan and Zorro. I'm putting my own spin on those characters as well. Like I said, I'm doing a Zorro story which deals with 3 descendants, possibly daughters. I'm still trying to decide on that. But I've been getting artwork done for the design of these characters, and they're like 3 women, and they all have like 3 magic swords. Paul Bunyan, the origin, I'm doing a different spin on Paul Bunyan. If you don't know about Paul Bunyan, he's a giant guy. He has this big ass blue ox named Babe, and Babe, in my story, Babe is actually a robot created by Paul Bunyan's dad to kind of like be a companion for him. And Paul Bunyan was lost in some caves underground, and ingested some mushrooms or strange fruit that were down there, and kind of helped him. But then when he got back home, he got really sick, and he just like almost died. And the dad did some radical experiments and saved his life. But gradually, Paul started getting big, like kaiju size, like Godzilla size almost, maybe like 100 feet. And so I want to, you know, have him have some fantastical adventures. And he will also be like one of the Sons of Legend characters, the premier Sons of Legend team, because these Paul Bunyan was like way back in like I guess the Davy Crockett, um, those stories about people living in the wilderness and all that. So this is like basically to just kind of keep me from going off the rails of being disorganized. But right now, the Dragon Manx is getting the top priority right now, because that project is finally, after years of me working on Dragon Manx, it's now, it just feels like, wow, the comic book is actually done, and the comic book is actually going to get published, and it'll actually be like a physical comic book, a real physical comic book that people can buy. And it's going to be like really amazing. It is magical. It feels almost like a dream, seeing something. You work on something for a long time. It's like you're in the kitchen and you're cooking something, and and the table just looks like a mess. I don't know if you're played with Lego before. You open the package and all the Legos is there, and it just looks like, oh my god. And then it starts to come together, and then it's like, wow, when it's done. So the Dragon Manx comic book, it is very significant in my life, because it's me, I guess, officially putting my universe out there so people can see it. I mean, I did my web series. I did my Detective Pig cartoon years ago. Didn't make any money off of any of this stuff. So there's always that like fear, like I hope they like my stuff. I hope people actually go and pay for my stuff. But I've got some really cool ideas, and I really do believe. I feel that there's characters that everyone will be able to relate to, and I think that there's situations that people will be able to relate to. And I know I keep hearing it's like it's a slogan now. I'm kind of tired of hearing it, like go woke, go woke and go broke. People keep saying that about I keep hearing people say that about Walt Disney. I don't know, man. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna be real. I grew up reading a lot of comic books, obviously, and I watched a lot of science fiction movies and TV shows. I've been influenced by a lot of this stuff. But a lot of this stuff was done. I mean, I'm being real. It was done. It was all done by white people. For the most part. There was some black people working on some things, and then as time went on, we started seeing more and more black characters, more people of color, more black, Hispanic. You always had Asian characters, but it was, I think initially it was very like stereotypical. And if you go back and you read some of those older stories, it's just kind of like cringeworthy. It's like, oh my god, people don't. Maybe you have some black people in the comic books, but they don't talk like nobody really talks like that, because you didn't really have black people writing those characters. I mean, so then later, as I guess things changed, and you had characters that were more accurate, and then you started having people of color working on things. So you have demographics that that read these things. I mean, I'm a black gay man, and you know I grew up. Most of the comic books that I grew up reading, they were featured like white characters. I mean, we had the X-Men. They were mutants. They were outcasts. They were discriminated against. We had one black person for the longest. We had Storm. It's like, really, they're only like Storm is like the only black mutant for like the longest. You didn't see like any like black mutants. And over time, you start seeing more and more black characters show up. You have characters like Black Lightning. You have Vixen. And I could have sworn Vixen was I don't know if she was supposed to be Brazilian originally. I don't know. Maybe I mixed up if she was Cuban or something, but I guess she's African. She's a black character. Um, so, of course, when you have a culture, you have something like comics and cartoons and video games, you're gonna start influencing people, and they're gonna want to start doing their own things. So you start seeing more and more characters of color. And sometimes they will take characters that are that are white, and they'll have like some black versions of it. I mean, you got Captain America, then you got Sam Wilson, and then you have Spider Man, you got Miles Morales, and you have Blue Beetle, and then you have Jaime Reeves, I think that's his name, and then you have Green Lantern, and you have John Stewart, and then you have Simon Baz, and then the Jessica Cruz. So I mean, you can have all these characters of representing the legacy of these characters, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I know sometimes people they just get triggered. It's like, why do you just make original characters? But they do that, but nobody buys the comics. So sometimes I mean, I guess it works to take the legacy and and then you build upon it, and I guess it's easier for people to digest. But I don't think that that's always why people do it. I mean, I am so glad that that Brian Michael Bendis created Miles Morales. I don't know if I think he was largely credited for creating Miles Morales. Maybe I don't know if anyone else worked with him, but he's usually the one that got all the credit. So I'm pretty sure he created Miles Morales. He also made Daredevil cool. Um, so every time you see a black character in something, it's not always the people aren't always trying to be woke. Is it's just nothing. There's I mean, come on. You can have a black Spider Man. You could have a you know I mean, it would be kind of weird to have a Black Panther be a white person, I think. But you do have white Africans, so that's all I'm gonna say about that. And then you had I forget what the guy's name was. There was a guy, he was out. It's not politically correct to say mulatto anymore, but there was a guy who I remember I used to read a comic book back in the day called The Crew, and there was a guy who I think he stole T'Challa's suit or something, and he was running around fighting crime, but he was a cop. And I remember it was really interesting, and I think Killmonger eventually gave him a synthetic version of the heart shaped herb that gives Black Panther his powers. So he has like powers now similar. I don't know what happened to the character because I haven't seen him in the comic books in years. I mean, so there are cool characters of color out there. They don't necessarily have to always take on a legacy. They could. Miles Morales might not be calling himself Spider Man in another 20 years. He may just create another name for himself. Maybe he's Electroshock Spider or something. I mean, that would be interesting if he did that. And I think that there's enough people that read Miles Morales comics that would just go, that would go even if he changed his name. I mean, Carol Danvers wasn't always Captain Marvel. I mean, she was Miss Marvel, then she was Binary, then she was Miss Marvel again, and then she became Warbird, and then she suddenly became, she's Captain Marvel, and then you have Kamala Khan, who's Miss Marvel, and I don't know. I haven't seen the Marvels yet, so I'm gonna try to go see it. I might go see it today, or maybe I'll go see it Monday. Monday when everybody will be going to work, I can go to the movies and not have to worry about standing in line and dealing with crowds. But Dragon Manx himself is a legacy character. Dragon Manx is an Alpha Omega Guardian. He's a mystical character who is empowered partially to protect the Earth from supernatural, mostly magical threats. Now, this comes from his mother's side of his heritage. So there's some conflict with his father's side because Anubis wants Goyangi, aka Dragon Manx, to take his place one day to succeed him. But Dragon Manx is kind of like, I don't know, and Bastet is like, he's a guardian. Because the lineage, part of Dragon Manx's lineage, is his mother was a priestess for Bastet, so she had the thing with the earth, and Goyangi's dad was a what is the word? He was a holy warrior, kind of like more like a priest, um, but not in the traditional way. It's more like a he was a traveling spiritual uh, worshiper of Anubis, and he had like certain powers. So he was kind of like a super soldier. So he had like his own abilities. So mother had like mystical, animal like powers, and the father had like spiritual like death kind of things. So Dragon Manx got some of that from his human parents, and then this humans. His father is also somewhat genetically engineered because through his well comes from his ancestors. So you had the father possessed by Anubis and the mother possessed by Bastet. So then they had, while they were getting it on, some of their mojo went into Dragon Manx, went into Goyangi as well. So it's almost like ghost. You could say almost like a ghostly kind of thing. The ghost possessed the people, and so when the people had the children had something special. So I don't think I've ever heard any stories about that. I'm sure there's probably some stories about ghosts possessing people and children being born. I mean, there's stories about vampires, you know, not supposed to have children with human, but it happened with Angel, you know, and I think I don't know if the son's name was Connor or something, but Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he had a child with a human. It's like a miracle, almost impossible to happen. But the kid wasn't a vampire. He just had like, I guess he had kind of like some superhuman qualities because he jump around like a damn, like a freaking kangaroo, and he was kind of strong. I mean, but he wasn't really like Blade. I guess in some aspect he was because he had some of the vampire strength and agility. But so the idea of gods possessing people, I mean, that's not exactly new either because Zeus would appear as a beam of golden light, and lady would get pregnant. Even stories of Jesus, the Virgin Mary. So you had these two Egyptian gods. This goddess possessed these people, and they had a baby. So Bastet hides Goyangi in some weird mystical time capsule somewhere, so Anubis can't like try to like make him his successor or his heir, because Anubis can be kind of cruel with some of his methods for molding people. I mean, so I'm not gonna get into that, but you can just imagine, just try to imagine having uh, a cruel death god, kind of somewhat cruel death god, maybe doing bad things to you, but really it's for your own good because he wants to make you strong. But so anyway, Dragon Manx has got like a really crazy story, and I definitely want to do like some flashback stories from his past because he was a child running around in ancient Egypt at some point in his life. So he's remembering there's the repressed memories. He's got repressed memories. So those are I could even do like some, maybe do like a series of, that just deals with him being a kid, with some limited abilities, maybe that he didn't really. Because I had written down some stories. I think I wrote some notes about Goyangi, even as a kid in the modern world, having some adventures. As his powers got more and more stronger. Like for example, he encountered Dracula at one point in the modern age, maybe like in the 90s or something, and Dracula just kind of like these kids, Dragon Manx, he's a kid, Goyangi, he's hanging out with some kids, and they go into this haunted house, and Dracula's in there, and all the kids are just kind of like freak out and run away, and Goyangi just kind of like stands there, he's like, and Dracula is like looking at him, he's just kind of he knows that this kid is like dangerous and powerful because one of Goyangi's powers is that he can control the dead, even as to the living dead. So you can just like look at a vampire and just make the vampire just like just pass out or whatever. He's got like powers over them. So, but Dracula's badass. He's not like you know, freak out or anything. So he just has like a conversation with this kid, and and maybe Dragon Manx Goyangi goes through life, maybe thinking, maybe wanting to talk with someone like that again, knowing that he should have been afraid. Because when I was a kid, I had a really weird experience, and it seemed almost like it was a dream, but it feels like it wasn't a dream. It's like I remember being in a room and something tickling me, and but the hands were cold. It was like icy hot, and I just felt like something, like there was this, like it was a supernatural experience. I don't really tell a lot of people this for obvious reasons, but I always wondered, like, what if I met some force, and one day I would have a conversation with that force again or something. I don't know. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I think anybody that would have a supernatural experience at a young age would probably be wondering, would that, if you met someone supernatural, you probably would want to, they'd be like really cool and you want to talk to them again, maybe ask them questions. This kind of makes me think of the Queen of the Damned movie, where the girl, she was adopted by the vampires, and they just kind of like cast her out and, like, I guess put her with human beings, because I guess when she came of age, she started asking questions, and they didn't, I guess, instead of just erasing her mind, or maybe they kind of did, but she said she always felt like there was something strange about her family, but she didn't really know exactly what it was. So she didn't understand why. She just knew there was something strange, because, like, in there was one scene where she gets, I think the vampire that adopted her is crying, and like the blood, they cry blood, and the girl goes to like lick it, and she snatches her hand away, and she's like, you have to go away. So it's just like, it's kind of a situation like that. So maybe Dragon Mace could have like a really interesting connection with Dracula, the person, that maybe, I don't know, could say might would possibly be an enemy, could be considered an enemy, or would just kind of have like one of those weird relationships that these characters have with each other, where maybe they can't really destroy each other, so they just have to figure out a way to coexist, like, respectfully. Because Dracula has been around for a long time, and Goyangi's legacy of the Alpha Omega Guardian, there's always been an Alpha Omega Guardian throughout the ages. So it's a legacy. There was another person charged with protecting the Earth from supernatural menaces before Dragon Manx was born. There was another person, maybe a few hundred years before that. So at least maybe similar to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. When one Alpha Omega Guardian is gone, then another one is born to like take their place. But I definitely have some stories planned where Dragon Manx meets some of his other ancestors, and even have some of them come into this world, and kind of like hang around for a while, which would be really interesting. I mean, could you imagine meeting like an ancestor, what they could teach you? Then there's a creepy aspect of it too, I guess, like in going into the future and like visiting like your grave or something like that. I mean, I don't know, that would be kind of like freaky, but then but typically there's nothing left of, well, I mean, the way Dragon Manx, the way he goes out, he pretty much falls into a volcano fighting a bad guy. Giving away spoilers, I know, but it helps to know the end. You know, when you start it, it helps to know the end, to know, and then it's just getting there, getting to the end of the story. So Dragon Manx may even meet other future other future Alpha Omega Guardians. I mean, that's something I hadn't really considered. I did have some plans with some kids, and there's some really big secret that ties into Sasquatch and Mythology Sisterhood with Dragon Manx. I'm not going to reveal that just yet. There's just something I've been toying around with, actually. It makes a lot of sense. Then Dragon Minx has a really interesting connection with one of the most powerful character in my universe anyway, the most powerful female character. But that's to be revealed later. Giving away stuff here, I know. So it is like 6:56, and I think the game that I was downloading on my Steam account is finished downloading. I'm downloading. I think it's Batman Arkham Origins, which is like 18 gigs. I had like a few minutes, so I didn't think I'd be talking for 40 minutes, but here I am, trying to get your support, trying to get you interested in my world, my concept for Dragon Minx, and my whole connected universe. So this is day 15. Still got some more days to go. 14 days, I think. 14, 13 days. So I'll be back with another video tomorrow. Not this early, because I will probably be going to bed tomorrow around this time. I work nights, so my schedule is all weird. I'm usually going to bed when everybody else is getting up. But I have a Zoom conversation that I have to do tomorrow, a Zoom meeting I've got to do. So I got to make sure that I go to bed at a decent time tonight, so I can wake up tomorrow and just be refreshed. So I might do the whole go to bed early and then get up and have a bowl of oatmeal and a banana, and I might have to drink an energy drink or something. I'm not too much of a day person. I can wake up. Given enough time, I can wake up at a decent time and go to meetings, but it can be difficult because of my schedule. My body is just so used to being up all night and just going to sleep at like weird times. Because my work schedule is like 10 to 6, and I don't go to bed right away most of the time when I go home. So anyway, that's my video for today, promoting my Dragon Minx comic book for my Kickstarter campaign. And I am about to turn off this my MSI gaming laptop. Not using my Chromebook today, but I'll probably be using him tomorrow because I love this computer. Anyway, you have a good day, or maybe it's night where you are, and I'll be back tomorrow.